Hi there! Sorry I've been a bit absent this month. I've been having a bit of a hard time filming videos for this channel just because last week I actually had filmed a video about 4 or 5 different times and I couldn't get it the way I wanted, and so I just didn't do it in the end. But I'm here today with a review video, which, yay, I actually read books, which is good because I haven't been reading that much lately. I've kind of been in a bit of a slump, but I feel like that's over right now, so fingers crossed that I'm out of the slump. So when I first realized I was in a slump, I decided I wanted to reread some of my favorite books to try and get me out of that. The only book I actually ended up rereading is this one, which is Alexander Dumas's The Black Tulip. I read this like 4 or 5 years ago. I love Alexander Dumas. This is not an author I talk a lot about on this channel just because I have read the majority of his work, so I'm not reading a lot of him. I have read all 5 of the 3 Musketeer books. I have read The Black Tulip twice now. I have read The Count of Monte Cristo. I think I still need to read George's and Lorraine Margot. I'm not entirely sure. I also have read his son's work. But yeah, basically I'm a giant Dumas fan. The premise of this story is basically, it's kind of like a miniature Count of Monte Cristo in that it's kind of a revenge plot. It is a historical novel like most of Dumas's novels. These are like one of the few historical novels I can actually stomach because Dumas was writing in the past and he didn't really make it too political. This is one of the more politically inclined stories out of all of them, I would say. If memory serves, I haven't read Dumas in like a really long time, but it deals with the Dutch Republic and William of Orange, and basically growing tulips, and it is fantastic. I would highly recommend it. It's not that long, especially in comparison to some of his other work, so I would recommend it as a good introduction. The first 2 chapters are really heavy in history, which I think the first time around I found boring and skipped, or like skimmed, but this time, because I have a lot more experience with especially Dutch Republic history, I find it far more interesting. So this was a really pleasurable experience rereading this. So the next book I read is actually not one that I read, but one that I listened to. I'm just gonna set that down. And that is the Iliad by Homer. I listened to the Fitzgerald translation and it was narrated by Dan Stevens, who most of you will know as Matthew Crawley from Downton Abbey. I chose this one. The thing I find hard about audiobooks is that you also have to take the narrator into account, not necessarily just the translation, but I do find the form particularly effective when I'm listening to epic poetry. So this is the second epic poem that I've listened to. I also listened to The Odyssey by Homer last summer. This took me quite a while. I think I started it back in October, and I was listening to it on the train, but I couldn't always listen to it because I also had like school readings that I'd have to get done on my commute. But I finally finished it this spring because I started walking a lot more, so I listened to it a lot on my walks, made them feel a lot more epic because, you know, you're listening to the story of the Iliad. I do definitely prefer the Odyssey over the Iliad, partially because the Iliad, we don't have the full version. It's slightly fragmented, so they fill it in. It's also a lot, like, it's very graphic. They talk a lot about stabbing people and it going into their bowels and their entrails and like spilling everywhere, and it's very graphic. It was enjoyable. I am glad that I listened to it because it is one of those like Western canon books that everybody feels that they need to read, and now I have it done and I like can say that I have read the Iliad. But it's not one that I'm like, oh, I'm definitely gonna like reread that again, but it's one of those that are like the accomplishments books. So next up, which was on my TBR, the next 3 I actually just finished my TBR, is The Once and Future King by T.H. White. And this actually is what I was trying to talk about last week and that I failed in, and that is, should we hold authors from the past to our modern standards? Because I have a lot of issues with this book. T.H. White is racist. T.H. White is sexist. Yeah, there's just a lot of like, he uses the N-word, and like, this book was published in the 1930s, so do you give him a pass? But like, the thing is, you know, intellectually you can say, okay, this author wrote in a time where things were different and you can rationalize it that way, but also because I'm reading this in 2015 because I'm a feminist, because I am a woman living in Canada and I am reading this. Having those things in there really jarred me out of my reading experience and really took it away. I feel like I would have enjoyed this a lot more had I read it like in my early teens, kind of, you know, like between 10 and 15. If I read that then, I would have loved this book. As it is, I think I gave it 2 stars on Goodreads. It just, yeah, it didn't resonate with me. It's a really big Arthurian book, and I think I just don't like Arthurian books because everything I have read about Arthur just makes me angry, like so much. Between Mary Stewart's The Crystal Cave and this year, I'm not on the Arthur bandwagon. This is a beautiful edition. Unfortunately, it will be leaving my shelves because I'm not going to keep around a book that I think is racist and sexist, and like, realistically, if you're writing in the 1930s, like, I get that that's a different time, but also you had Jane Austen come before you, so really, what's your excuse? I don't know. I couldn't formulate that argument into a full video, but it is something that I do consider, like, can we hold them up, especially because I read a lot of classics, so leave your comments down below. It's also something I noticed a lot with the Iliad. So also, I read H is for Hawk, Helen McDonald. This is a biography. This was definitely a departure from my normal reading. This is part autobiography and part biography because she does talk a lot about T.H. White. Part of the reason why I wanted to read The Once and Future King is because I wanted to read H is for Hawk, and I knew that there was a lot of T.H. White mentioned into it. I find it a little bit jarring jumping from her tales of T.H. White to her own tales. I mean, they're intermixed really well because she does talk about Hawk learning how, or sorry, T.H. White learning how to hawk, as well as her own efforts in training a goshawk, which is one of the harder birds to train. McDonald is an experienced falconry person, falconer, is that the word? I think that's the word. I did find this interesting in that I am partially interested in falconry, but it was okay. I think I gave it like 3 stars. It was just okay. Like, there's nothing bad with that. It's not necessarily a bad review, it's just like, I felt like it was 2 books going on at the same time. But yeah, so the final book that I read, that was also on my TBR, is Spinster, Making a Life of One's Own by Kate Bullock. This I had already started reading before I made my TBR, and I actually ended up finishing it after the other 2 because I kind of took a break to finish those 2. I really enjoyed this. This is part literary memoir, part autobiography, which sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. Probably one of my favorite is, I think her name's Rebecca Mead, My Life in Middlemarch, does this really well. Kate Bullock also does this really well. An example I'm thinking of that doesn't do this well is, oh, and I was just talking about this with Mercy from Mercy's Bookish Musings, the heroine one. I don't remember the name. Yeah, but there's like this one that Mercy and I were talking about, and she really liked it and I hated it, and it was talking about heroines. But yes, this was fantastic. Basically it looks at how single women are perceived by society and the prejudices against them. But she also looks at the 5 women who have influenced her ideas about how single women should live. This was really fascinating. She talks about people like Edith Wharton and other authors who are not as well known, and that's fantastic. She focuses mostly on the 5 main authors that she views as her like guiding authors, and then she also delves into a couple others. Yeah, I really enjoyed this. I thought this was interesting, especially because I am single and I do feel a lot of the same pressures that she talks about like the need to be married and like, oh, one day you'll meet a man and things like that are really frustrating when you're single and you're like, I don't actually care about that stuff. But yeah, so I would definitely recommend this if that is your jam, feminist, like social science kind of books with a bit of literary like biography in there as well. But yeah, so those are the 5 books for my recent batch review, and I will try and get a little more consistent as the month goes on. There might be a break coming up in July. I'm not too sure. I'm gonna try and film some videos ahead of time, but I'm not gonna be in my house for like 2 weeks, and then I'll be back for a week, and then I'm gone for a week just because the Pan Am Games are coming to Canada, which are the North and South America basically come together and have like a mini Olympics type of thing. There's 41 countries. It's really exciting. Not actually because I don't care about sports, but I am volunteering for it because it does look really good on my CV, so I will be out of my house for like 2 weeks volunteering for that. So hopefully I'll be able to get some videos like pre-uploaded. I don't know what my internet situation is going to be like, but in the meantime, I'm going to try and be a little more consistent with my videos, and I will see you guys next week. Bye!